Hello, Studio 108 community. I'm so happy that you clicked in because I am sitting with my very dear friend Anne Ondrey, and we haven't chatted in a while, so we've had quite a lengthy pre-talk catching up on things. And I'm happy to say that she's coming to the studio on November 2nd. That's a Saturday, and at this point, gosh, maybe 10 days away. So it's coming up really quickly, and she's talking about something that I think is so incredibly relevant. As a matter of fact, it may be so relevant that we don't even recognize it. As if I was asking the goldfish to tune in for a workshop, or in this case, a podcast chat about water, right? Like the goldfish is like swimming in the water. Why would he even want to tune in on something about water? But we're going to ask you to take a listen today and think about this topic, and consider it maybe, like that water, like maybe it's so ingrained in us that we don't even appreciate. So what is the topic? And I'm going to let you say it.
The topic is the anatomy of anxiety. And what I'd like to focus on is not pretty much what people focus on when they go into therapy, which is cognitive therapy, which is very critical and important and helpful. But I'm interested in the somatic anatomy piece of anxiety.
Love that. And so when we talk about somatics, that's another pretty hot little buzzword lately. Let's just unpack that. Like, what is somatics? What is that about?
Well, soma's the body. So somatics is coming from the orientation of the body. We live in a very cerebral cognitive world. As Andy Puddicombe, the famous meditation teacher from London, says, your body is more than a taxi for your brain. Like, we think of the body sometimes as just literally like something to drag your brain around.
Yeah, there's like a cartoon that shows like the brain with this floppy little, like the tail of a kite. The body's like the tail of a kite, and it's the brain moving around the world. But to come down into our form and occupy all of that physical matter that is our body, that's a pretty significant shift in perspective.
Yeah, and it's called yoga. I mean, the Buddha called us to wake up, and being awake is being in the present moment. And to be in the present moment, you need to be in your body, because your body is in the present moment at all times. And as my teacher Herb Stevenson says, the safest place you can ever be is in your body.
Wow. And I feel like that needs a deep breath. Like, the safest place you can be is in your body, when our reaction to stress, to trigger, to trauma, to fear is to kind of exit the body.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of spiritual practices, unfortunately, have promoted and inculcated this, which is, yay, let's go to Planet X. And I've been on Planet X a lot, and it's really fun, but it hasn't really helped me get present, and it hasn't helped with my awareness.
Yeah.
So
And I think too, when I'm sort of disconnected and out of my body, and it's funny because you're like, yeah, I'm in my brain, but I'm also in my laptop and in my phone. Like, this is the world, right? Like, my virtual world going on, as if those goggles were somehow like they're tricking me into thinking that's life. But when I'm there and not in the body, there's no real hope for finding Planet X anyway.
I'm not
There's no
saying that,
real. Go ahead.
that they're not mutually exclusive, but you need to be in your body, right? And the social media component, and is one of the things we'll talk about in the workshop, is how our body is responding to current conditions, which are rather phenomenally difficult for our body, which is the same body. Obviously, we've had changes, but essentially we're the same creatures that have been on this planet for many years. And the invention of the light bulb and just this and television and social media and the phones, it just keeps accelerating. And the statistics are pretty phenomenal. I mean, anxiety is so much more prevalent. Depression is prevalent, but anxiety is so much more of a issue than depression. And women are so much more affected statistically than men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we've got like a social patterning that contributes to that. And then we've got the actual activities that may be coming at us that contributes to that. But one of the reasons why I love like interacting with you around these kinds of topics is that it gives me a chance to do that self-awareness and self-witnessing, to just see like how much of my anxiety, like where my anxiety is driving my behaviors, where I am or am not taking the opportunity for the choice point, like where there's choice point and I just sort of like, blow by it, so it's always helpful to me to just have the interaction and the conversation to see like how does this, where is this landing on my dashboard of self relationship.
Life is it is stressful. I mean, I'm sure it was stressful for the Vikings and in the Black Plague and during World War II, for heaven's sakes, how the people in London ever survived the Blitz and after World War I and everything they've been through. But the level of chronic stress related to anxiety about the future, I'm not sure those folks they were just trying to get through the moment. Maybe they were thinking about the future, but climate change and the events of Hurricane Helene in northwestern North Carolina. I mean, there's a whole anxiety piece around that. Mm-hmm. In terms of current events, health of the planet. Mm-hmm. The health of the planet is tied to the health of our bodies. So our bodies feel distress. And then we have, and I will not get political in the workshop. We're not going to talk about that. But the kinds of things, if you look at them, that people are anxious about statistically are, keeping themselves and their families safe, right? Keeping their identity safe, their health, paying bills, expenses, the opioid epidemic, the impact of emerging technology on day-to-day life. Climate change was actually on that list. Study of things that people were anxious about. So
it is. It's a little bit like the water for the goldfish. It's like so embedded into the life that we're living.
And then, like you say, these choice points are really critical because yoga teaches us to notice. I mean, awareness is noticing. Mm-hmm. So you notice where you are in this moment. Like right now, you and anyone who's listening, just notice, where's your nervous system right now? Like on a scale of 1 to 5, are you more agitated or are you sort of half asleep and think you're going to turn this off and go to bed? Mm-hmm. So you're noticing where you are on the agitation versus relaxation. And then your choice points related to that. So let's say, for example, it's 10 o'clock at night, maybe it's 9:30. This is a chronic problem because people often, particularly women, don't feel like they have a lot of time to themselves. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do at that 9:30, 10 o'clock time? That's a big choice point, I think, for a lot of people. Because sleep, we're going to talk about sleep a lot. Because sleep has so much to do with anxiety. Mm-hmm. Choice points of when you eat, because you're noticing. It's just like motor control when you're in a class and the teacher's trying to get you to notice, well, is your glute working, right? When you do a bridge pose, right? Or when you do a single leg,
Yeah, like a lunge pose. Yeah.
lunge, single leg lunge with one knee down. Can you feel your glute working? This is the same thing. Are you hungry? When was the last, when your kids call from college, one of my friends just told me, she said, you only have to say two things, right? When they call from college and they're like, oh, you say, when was the last time you ate and when was the last time you slept? So just cover those two things and it'll go better from then. When my kids would come home from school and even in high school and they'd be really upset, they'd be talking about something that happened. I'd say, oh yeah. And I'd say, sit down on the couch and give me your feet. And I'd take their shoes and socks off and I'd massage their feet. And literally within 5 minutes, we're talking about something else.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So I used to sit and talk to them about what happened, and I realized it's not actually really a good choice point. It's not really actually very effective. I mean, if there's something that needs to be addressed, then you get the information.
Well, and I think that that's the key right there, is that how do we even know what needs to be addressed when the system is so elevated? So, like, the first thing is to just down regulate and get calm, and then you can kind of see, like, is any of this real, or is a lot of this, the emotional agitation, and valid for the emotions for sure, but also the skill set and the strategies to say, can I take that spinning wheel and develop some sort of a habit that lets me notice that it's spinning, put a slow down stop to it so that I can become more functional for a minute here. And those are really important things to kind of check in with, because I find that like we're in a good place and we're going along, and then we're going along, and then we're going along, and like, when did that happen? I was in a good place.
Yeah, it's called timeout for adults. So you remember, I mean, when my kids were little, that was when, and everybody was using timeout. So we have a very famous picture in our family of my daughter sitting in a chair, and she has her raincoat on. I guess we were going somewhere in boots, and she has these, polka dot tights. So it's this fun, and a green raincoat, and she's kicking, but she's sitting in the chair, and it's just like, well, we're just going to wait until we can talk to her, because we can't talk to her right now. We forget that as adults, we actually have the same thing going on. We're more enculturated and socialized, so we don't kick and scream. And I mean, you wish you could sometimes, right?
Yeah.
When I see a kid sometimes in a store screaming, I mean, I feel bad for the family, and I hope that they can regulate, but I also feel like, wouldn't that be great to just walk into a store and start shrieking?
I mean, is that not how you feel? A lot of the times I'm like, yep, I get you. I know exactly how you feel.
I'm with you. I get it.
Totally get it. Yeah. And I think too, one of the things that happens for me is that as the wheels start spinning faster and faster, my choices change. So then it's more sugar. It's like I kind of join in with my anxiety, and then I don't notice perhaps that anxiety has really become elevated until I'm 2 or 3 symptoms down the road. And it's nice just to be able to remember, like, let me be alert to that and see if I can catch that before it escalates so far.
That's why it's anatomy of anxiety. It's the physiology of anxiety, because it really, I don't think we give enough credit. We talk therapy is really important, but you cannot talk yourself out of anxiety. I mean, you can help it somewhat, but you really need to change your environment. Judith Lassiter used to talk about how with her children, I guess there are these plums that are very, very tart in California. We don't have them here. I'd never heard of them. And she said when her kids were dysregulated, she'd listen to them and she'd give them one of these plums. She'd say, here, eat this plum. And they'd take a bite of the plum, and it was so tart, shifted their brain state.
Wow. Wow. That's something that's newer from when I first started teaching, is this understanding that in order to downregulate, there needs to be like just a little uptick, like how that freeze point happens. And also another portion of the conversation that's newer is like the fawn, like the becoming cooperative to the stress.
That has really been my experience in that I have, at 67, that I finally realized in like my mid to late 60s is that I have been anxious my entire life, and I have accommodated my mode of survival. And this is not a reflection on anyone in my life, but that just my way of being in the world was to be a fawn, was to be an accommodator and a pleaser, and let's make everything nice. But underneath all of that, I was anxious all the time. I didn't really realize I was anxious all the time. And when I came to yoga, that's when, I mean, I played sports in high school, and I was always fairly, when I was physically active, I knew I felt better. But then yoga was this new aha, just the way you would feel at the end of a class in Shavasana. And you'd think, oh, I would kind of like to have more of this.
Yeah,
This,
you mean there's a way of being that isn't just supercharged. There's a way of being that can just be comfortable and easy and I don't know, maybe more reliable. It feels safer.
I think your metaphor about the fish in the water is so apt, because you don't notice the downregulation if you are subtly upregulated and not present all the time. Because it also has to do with, everybody's different. It has to do with your level of presence. But if you're, a lot of women, if you're like, my experience for myself has been being more of a pleaser. So I've been very keyed into what other people need and not very keyed into what I need.
Yeah.
But everybody's different. They have to figure out their own pattern, right? You figure out your pattern muscularly, skeletally, in terms of how you move, right? Do you overuse your back line for power, right? Do you hold your breath for power? Do you clench your jaw for power, right? That's the body piece. And in terms of the interaction piece with other people, what do you do to make it possible to interact with other people, based on meeting your own needs and meeting other people's needs? Like, what patterns have you developed around all of that? And the thing is, those patterns are in our body. They're not just, it's all the same. It's like, it's so interesting. I just finished a book called The Patient Tells the Story. I think it's called, by Lisa Saunders. And she talks about the decline of the physical exam in medicine and how important the physical exam is, and how she's at Yale. She writes the column Diagnosis for the Sunday New York Times Magazine. And back, I think it was like in 2005, Yale did a study. They took fourth year medical students and they set up a whole thing where they would do exams, and they videotaped them, and they found that 20% of them failed their physical exam of patients. They did not, they weren't putting the stethoscope in the right place to check the heart. So they redid their whole training based on that. The teachers were stunned at how bad it was.
Yeah.
Because we have done this big reliance on tests, and tests are wonderful and they're very helpful, but you also need the physical piece. So it's even in medicine, it's this inclination to get away from touching people and the physical piece because of what you can learn from that. But what I'm saying is there's so much to learn from your own body if you listen.
Yeah.
Right. And it will give you messages of anxiety, like you say, so that you can hopefully make a better choice when you're at those choice points.
Yeah, and I think even the courage it takes to take a deep breath and to tune into yourself and to feel into the truth of how you feel. Like, it can really be unnerving and produce its own anxiety to realize that you've kind of been running blind, and that there are things that you want to slow down and think about and reconsider and kind of take control back, like kind of take your mindful sovereignty back into your own energetic sphere, kind of reclaim yourself.
And of course, particularly people with high ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, right? Or trauma of any kind. And that's why the body keeps the score, has been on the New York Times bestseller list for what, 5 years?
Oh, and maybe 5 more. Let's do it. Yeah, it's really a critical book.
Yeah, it is a critical book, but it's also really important for these processes to be done with support.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting because I had an ER room visit one time with my husband, and the doctor had retired and then had this traumatic event, a big injury, and had to cease what he was doing in his retirement project and come back to working part-time in the ER. And he told me that he was reading The Body Keeps the Score, and that he would only read it when his wife was in the room because he found it so challenging.
Yeah, I actually had a friend who had her therapist read it aloud to her because it was so very, and it was very triggering to me. I remember reading it on the back deck in the summer sun and just page by page, just doing it, you know, as much as I could. It's very triggering.
I found it so, yeah. So it's, you really, just anybody listening, if you're doing this kind of work, it is courage, but it's also get adequate support.
100%.
Because you don't put your hand on a hot stove and keep it there, right? You just explore what's coming up. And
at a pace that you can integrate and be safe with, yeah.
And you're never going to get the balance just right, but just making sure that you have the support for what's coming up.
I know that one of the things that that we've talked to before is about hyperflexibility in yogis and how that contributes to the regulation of the nervous system too. Is that something that you'll be touching on Saturday?
A little bit, but I think it is also fascinating that in the research on hypermobility, that there is a very high incidence of high ACE scores, adverse experience.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. What comes first, chicken or egg? That's super interesting. So even when you think about some of that hypermobility being genetic, it could be also sourced in the generational trauma patterning. Interesting.
So there is, of course, with anxiety, and we've been working on this much more in yoga in the last 10 to 15 years, is safety on the mat, right? And you're creating safety on the mat so you can find safety in your life. And the question is, what does that look like for you? And as you say, if you're the fish swimming in the water of anxiety and you don't sense the anxiety, then if you're hypermobile on the mat, you may not be able to feel that, because you can't feel much when you're hypermobile and you're desperate for sensation.
Right.
So that can certainly, yoga unfortunately has contributed to that a bit as a,
kind of glorified it a little bit. And I know, that kind of brings us full circle to this idea of embodiment and somatic work, just becoming really attuned to our inner world and the interoception that's required, like the neurological communicative pathways that have to be developed to say, like, can I feel my left big toe? Do I realize I just stubbed it? Did anyone notice it was bleeding like me? Did I notice, and just like kind of moving in so that we can feel the state of our being and how we're managing for ourselves.
Absolutely. It's and the embodied journey is so fascinating, I have found, because the older I get, the more I realize that it's, you don't know what you don't know. Mark Twain said, it's not what you know it's not what you don't know that trips you up. It's what you think you know that's wrong.
Yeah. And then that whole thing where what we know is actually this much and what there is to know is huge. So it's not a game that's necessarily going to be won. It's just a process to engage in.
And it's the subtle body, and the subtle body does not give its secrets up, quickly, or, okay, you want to know about this? Here it is. It's like, no, it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
It takes time. It's a process. It's a journey, and maybe
it's a relationship. Like, you have to really cultivate the relationship with yourself.
Well, in relationship with the one person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, which is your body.
Yeah.
Who is your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your best friend is your first breath and your last breath. So this intimate relationship with our own body, and particularly many of us were brought up in religious cultures where that was
Yeah, taboo.
absolutely taboo and discouraged because we did not have ownership or sovereignty over our own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
They were considered evil, and lustful and having all kinds of bad things.
Yeah, to be denied, yeah. And then also the social acceptance of just to be abused. There was like a lot of acceptance around that we come away with, not
Uh,
necessarily a long way with, not necessarily all the way there, but like reclaiming ourselves. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to like the all of it, the science of it. Like I think you guys can maybe hear that Anne brings a lot of scientific knowledge, but also from this incredibly compassionate heart that is sourced in a deep spiritual practice that she keeps. So once again, there's like, even when you talk about the anatomy of your anxiety and this embodiment and the wholeness of who we are, that it's not just the physical, it's like the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, like the all of who we are, that she's going to be integrating and discussing, and always with a lot of practices and experiences so that we can get a feel for that, for our own selves, and we're not just heads talking. She's not just going to be a head talking at us about it with her kite tail body, the whole thing. So we're looking forward to having you, Anne. Anything
well,
in conclusion?
well, like, do you have a minute? Let's take a moment and do a little practice.
Okay, yes, 100%.
So,
Oh, and stay tuned for the surprise announcement at the end. Go ahead.
right, and don't do this if you're driving in a car. If you're listening to us and you're traveling, you can do it when you get home. Keep driving. Don't downregulate your nervous system when you're in traffic. But if you are at home or in a space where you can relax for a few minutes, if you're seated in a chair, just find your hips on the chair and your feet on the floor. Take a breath in through your nose and then out through your mouth a few times. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or you can find a drishti, a gaze spot. You have your eyes sort of half open, or open all the way if you prefer. It's always a practice of asking your body, do you like this or that? It's like going to the eye doctor, A or B. And can you notice as you start to settle in here, you can go back to breathing in and out through your nose. Where do you feel more activity? Or what kind of activity you feel? Do you feel a lot of thinking, activity up in your head, and the sort of neck up? If you just ate, maybe you feel something in your belly. Do you feel your feet as they rest on the floor? So go to the place in your body that's drawing your attention, whether it's head, neck, right, chest, belly, hips, legs, feet. Place that's saying, look at me, look at me. Now, what happens if, imagine, it's like when you're cooking and you have rice in a pot, let's say a casserole, and you're sautéing it for pilaf, and it's all in one corner of the pot, and you're going to just take your wooden spoon and you're going to move some of that rice over to the other side of the pot to even it out. So can you take a breath in and focus on this place where you feel a lot of energy, and can you move it somewhere else? Just softly invite it to move. Maybe you're moving it from your head down into your pelvis and down your legs into your feet, or maybe you're moving it from your pelvis up into your chest. But you don't feel much in your hands and you're moving it from your head down your arms into your hands, but you pick the spot. So now the rice is even-ish across the bottom of the casserole dish. We're moving in that direction. See if as you go through your day today, you can maybe just take a moment at times and notice, where do you feel the focal point in your body? Notice it. And then can you just take a breath in, and as you exhale, can you move it someplace else? And play with it. Play with what you feel and sense in your body. Ask your body questions. Some people do it actually silently, asking themselves a question. Some people just do it by sense and feel. Now, if you're coming back, just take a few deeper breaths and slowly open your eyes if they're closed. Where were you moving energy?
I started with a lot of like activity action at my inner thighs and fronts of hips. So I could feel when that relaxes that it drains down to my feet. And then kind of the heaviness is not unusual for me to be in this kind of Bermuda triangle, the right side of my neck and shoulder, and was just kind of like sweeping it out and down and across, trying to get it to like kind of just flush somewhere. But it's precious just to be able to take a moment for something like that. And my guess is it might have been 5 minutes, 7. So you guys don't hesitate to kind of earmark this and come back to it, because it's a 5-minute little tool that you can have for yourself, free of charge, easy peasy, right on your phone. For if you're waiting in the carpool line, if you're you have a few minutes at the end of the day and you just want to fall, drop yourself in so that you can fall asleep. If you have time and dinner's ready and no one's home yet and you can just sit for a minute, like any little sliver of time, really noticed your choice point and to use it optimally. This is a great a tool and a gift that Anne gave us. So I'll be tuning in again for that one. It was lovely.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure and a joy to
It
be with you.
is. It is. It is. It is. It is. And here is our surprise treat: is that we decided that it is such a stressed out time. We're going to have a special pricing. So the price of the workshop is dropped from $60 to $45. So catch it now. This is our stressed out special. We really, really want the best for you, and we really want to share these ideas and these tools so that you can be effective in your life. It's like everything that we can possibly give to the people we care about becomes their gift to give to the next person. So this is what Anne and I do, because this is what we love to share with people. And then we hope that you're able to support yourself and share with others. So come in and see us. Teachers get continuing ed units, but it's not just for teachers. So anyone is welcome. Thank you, Anne. Go with many blessings.
Blessings, blessings.
Blessings, blessings, and remember who you are. Namaste, you guys. Thanks so much.